What would you do if you woke up and you were you, but you were a whole new you? You felt better than you ever had. You had all these new great ideas that you hadn't had before. Most importantly, would you check the toilet when you used it for the first time? These questions and more on the Living With Yourself After Show, starting now.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, welcome to the Living With Yourself After Show. I'm Christian Bladt, joined by Amy.
What's up, Christian? Hi, guys. I'm Emmy Maestri.
And it's been so long since we've talked about this show.
Has been.
It's only been a few minutes.
Ages.
But we are now going to talk about episode 2 of Living With Yourself. And here's the best part. I haven't seen any episodes after this. So now everything I talk about is going to be episode appropriate.
Yes.
I'm running into the same problem tomorrow when I think I have to actually watch 3. Yikes. Anyway. That's not the problem for right now. So here we are talking about episode 2 of Living With Yourself. And I want to just get an overall thought from you, Amy. What did you think?
So much funnier.
Yes.
Got a lot more chances to really see where the comedic value is going to come from in this show. And I think it's interesting because there are going to be 8 episodes total. This really was kind of like that catalyst episode of seeing where the conflict is really going to take off from.
Yeah.
So I think it was a great follow-up, and it had me just as excited to get to the 3rd episode as the pilot did to get me into this one.
Yeah, I think the pilot, while very good, was so much setup. And there's plenty of setup in this, but it starts to answer questions. Namely, what we talked about when we discussed the first episode is, what was the clone up to for 6 hours? I'd like to see some of that, And I think that there's a lot of ways that you can handle that story. And I would say just being really good at a meeting and picking vegetables and being nice to his wife, I was just like, oh, okay, that's not what I thought was going to happen, you know? So I thought it starts sort of at a very interesting point, he wakes up and he wants to, he's like, well, I need my wedding ring. And he gets some advice from the 2 gentlemen that we have made clear were known as left and right at the spa. And he gets the advice of no smoking, no drinking, no hanky-panky. Also eat yogurt. And whatever you do the first time you use the toilet, don't look. Which... not to go too much into the physics behind it, as a lady going to the bathroom, maybe you're not as inclined to look, but as a fellow who would have been standing, there's 0% chance I don't look.
Just such an ominous and strange thing to say. That of course you're going to look now.
I have to look. And then you see it's all rainbows. Like, oh, okay, that's not what I thought.
I mean,
I thought there would be like a human hand in there. I don't even know how, But what did you think about those very specific instructions that Miles 2 basically got?
Yeah, very, very specific. I was expecting something much more grotesque from the bathroom.
I was.
I'm kind of wondering, like, rainbows, I think of unicorns.
Yeah.
Are there unicorns coming in here? I don't know. Maybe. We'll find out. That might be in my predictions. I think I loved hearing the weird specificity from left and right while seeing this like childlike wonderment from Paul Rudd as Miles, as he just looks around and just is touching everything. And it's like, it's a newborn.
Yeah,
but it's weird because it's a newborn with a character, with a person already attached to it.
Yeah.
He knows who he is. He has memories, but he's still experiencing everything for the first time.
I loved when he leaves the spa and he's driving and he sticks his head out the window. That's like the dog with the tongue flapping in the breeze. Like, this is great. And then, of course, he pulls over and he runs through the cornfield, and we learn that's how the farmer knows who he is.
That's the dude.
And that's why he's so confused when he sees him back in a diaper. I'd like more of that interaction now, by the way. Like, like, what did he do? He's like, did he just run away?
Yeah.
Diaper Miles just ran away.
Ran away. Poor Diaper Miles really had a day.
Yeah, he did. And I also just some of the, just saying like, oh my God, I love soybeans. And he's like, nobody loves soybeans, And, so he has a fun afternoon picking vegetables. I thought was nice. So what did you think about, you're talking about sort of the childlike or pet-like, but just the sense of wonder.
Yeah.
And I think Paul Rudd did an amazing job conveying that on screen, right?
He's such a, like, I feel like he's kind of a kid at heart too, which would make sense because we were actually talking before we went on air about how he has aged maybe like 2 years from when he did Clueless.
Yeah, if you look at Clueless, which by the way was 1995, probably shot in 1994 in all honesty. So 25 years ago. And you look at it and you go like, okay, yeah, he's clearly older than that, but not a lot.
No.
You know, maybe 5 years. Maybe. And like, you know, we'll round up. And he's in his 50s. He looks so young. And I hate him for it. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it is really fun to see. So let's talk about the meeting that he ends up waltzing into late, and this is new Paul Rudd. This is new Miles bringing his new clone energy into the meeting. Talk a little bit about that scene and if it went the way you thought it would from the way it started.
Yeah, I felt like he had such energy and confidence going in there. I wasn't sure if it was actually going to connect or not, but I like the way that it did develop, where it's kind of just one of those things where you go like, oh yeah, he probably already had these kinds of ideas, and like he probably actually could be good at his job if he had like an shred of confidence in him.
Right, because the idea that he puts forth is a really simple one, but it's also like, we'll take a step back and let's look at this. What is this company? What are you actually selling? And, you know, instead of a VR presentation or anything like that, he's just like, you know, just talk about what the point is. Like, we know that it's about making connections, you know, and I think, yeah, it's like there's a lot to be said, and it tells you what Miles is usually like in those meetings, from what we saw at the beginning of the first episode, but also just like, oh, he probably does not usually contribute much.
Yeah, and especially in that fashion, too. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people would love to have the balls to just go into a meeting and be like, all right, let's all brainstorm. Let's close our eyes. Let's just kick some stuff around. And the way that it all kind of came together in the end, I thought was really kind of cool, because you do get to see like, oh, yeah, this idiot just needed to like put himself out there, and that's kind of that like going back to like the best version of yourself kind of theme.
Yeah, and his wife immediately notices this is a better version of him. And look, I think that there's a way to tell this story that I feel like we would have seen before, where he comes in and he's just so overcome, and, you know, they go up to the bedroom and they have this like, you know, crazy animal sex, and she's like, it's never like that. Yeah. And it's like, oh, it's because it's a different guy. I thought to make the choice of like, oh my God, I've never had sex. That realization that the clone has never, you know, I'm like, oh, that's so much better.
Yeah.
You know, and wherever it goes from here, we don't know. But I just thought it's like, oh, that's smart. And, you know, and there have been a few times already in just these 2 episodes that the show has not taken the turn I've expected. Yeah. And I thought it was just very sweet that he's sitting there, and he doesn't do anything exceptional at dinner. He just asks her like, how was your day? And she's like, what? My day? Like, why would you be asking me that? You never ask me that. And I thought that it was nice, a little creepy with the, you're amazing. No, that's actually what he said. He's like, something like, you're exceptional. You're exquisite.
Yeah.
You know? And then he interrupts and says, she's amazing. So it's like, you did both. All right, we get it. You like her. You got a crush on your wife. Whatever, dude. But I thought that that was really funny. And he's like, oh, I'll go to the clinic tomorrow. And then she doesn't trust him. She's like, why? Because I want to have a family. Like, he's like, of course. And culminated in they go into bed, and she's like, are you smelling me? So give us your thoughts about the interaction between Miles and his wife, or Miles the clone, and I guess technically not his wife.
Yeah.
it's the original Miles' wife.
Yeah, we'll have to see what what kind of what the rule book says on that. Yeah. I think it's so, that conversation was so telling. Literally all he did was cook dinner and like ask how her day was. Yeah. And that was like,
yeah,
like blew her mind by just doing like bare minimum basics of like being a good person in a relationship to your significant other. So I think it was a great way to show that like it is a better version of him, but it's not, like you said, it's not like he's not a different person. He's not going home and like throwing her up against the wall and having crazy sex with her. He's just being like, how was your day, honey?
Yeah, it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, the original Miles is probably a 4. This guy's like a 5.5, maybe a 6. Yeah. Like, you know, he's not a 10, but he's better. he's just a little bit more clear-headed.
Yeah.
He's not all weighed down. And you made a great point. He just has some self-confidence. That's actually all it takes.
Yeah.
He's got some ideas in his head. So then we get the other side of the interaction between the two of them. So we're getting the clone's perspective. And I like the moment when he calls 911 and they're like, what's your emergency? And it's like, that's not going to work. I'm going to have to not call 911 right now, which I thought was funny, especially when he kicks him out and the one, he says, the original one says, I know karate. And he's like, not unless you learned it since this morning.
There's so much humor to come from that of like, how you can't trick yourself.
Yeah.
And like that happened a couple different times where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so funny because that's just like you can get so much mileage out of that joke.
Right. And then they have the realization that, the clone Miles has all of the memories of the original, but not the experiences. He doesn't have the appendix scar. And that's what I referenced earlier when he's like, oh my God, I've never had sex. I've never done this. I've never done that. So it is very funny, just that realization. And I also love just to illustrate that clone Miles is better. Original Miles, they go to the diner. He's like, I'm going to have a burger and a Coke. And he's like, yeah, I'll just have a green tea and a fruit cup. And I will let you know if I ever go into any establishment and order a green tea and a fruit cup, because I definitely wanted the burger and the Coke.
Sounded really good.
Yeah, right.
But I also love that on top of, to piggyback from that original Miles is like even trying to be better now, just seeing the better version. He's like, oh yeah, I'll have that.
I guess I got to step
Margaret.
it up a little bit. Yeah, I know.
Using her name.
I learned your name. Clone me didn't. And there's some really great interaction between the two of them that start at that moment in the diner. Sort of the original Miles is like, well, I'd love to be you, and he poses the question a little bit later. He's like, you want to trade places?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I don't want to be you that much. But also a very funny line. I was made in a strip mall. And he's like, I was born in New Jersey. So I thought that was very funny. And he says that the clone should travel. And he's like, great, but, then what? And that's, I think, one of, just a great indication of what this show could be, is the two of them together. And, like you said, you can't keep secrets from yourself. You can't trick yourself, and nobody knows you as well as yourself. So all the good things about yourself, all the good ideas that you never had, and all the terrible, awful things about you that you've let yourself forget over the years. So I hope to see a lot more of that dynamic. I really thought that Paul Rudd did an amazing job being the two different versions of himself.
Yeah. I think with that scene too at the diner, like you were saying, all the different like things that they were bringing up and what you could do, and them kind of saying, well, you could do this or you could do that. It's such a cool theme that they're going to be exploring, I feel like, now for the rest of the season, as to, like, if you did have this chance, would you take it? Or what is the better version of you? Is it that dude who's just traveling by himself and like living it up? Or is it that person who's just like happily in love with his wife and trying to have a family at home and going to a job every day? So I thought that was a really interesting conversation that's probably going to lay out a lot for the future of the show.
I did like how they went back to the spa and demanded a full refund. And again, they said, no refund. So then they're like, well, we're going to call the FDA. And I did like, I don't remember if it was left or right, makes the point that pointing to the clone is your very existence is a crime. It's like you shouldn't exist, which I thought was very funny. The idea that there are strict FDA regulations against cloning, and they leveraged it. And I like that they get the full refund, and then it's like, no, extra $10,000 too. But you never come back again. So what did you think about that sequence as it unfolded? Especially with, I believe, Wright completely losing his accent at that point.
Oh my gosh. I love that he doesn't even have an accent.
I thought that was great.
Fully drops the act. Of course, Left is the one who hangs up the phone and is like, no, we gotta cut our losses here on this one. These guys are not gonna stop. And I loved that original Miles is still just kind of piggybacking on what Clone Miles is doing. Everything he says, he's that guy going, yeah, that's in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought the dynamic for the two of them and that was great. And of course, updated Miles is the one to be confident enough to pull off that whole move of just having it there on speaker and being like, okay,
Yeah.
Your move, dude.
Yeah, because you feel like original Miles does not have it in him to pull that off. So I thought that that was very much a nice, sort of a nice touch. So they do come to the realization, I like that they split the money, you know. And then Clone Miles is going to go travel, you know, and again, the notion that you can't fool yourself. It's like, well, I'm going to need a credit card. Not the one with the balance on it. You know, he's like, I need the good one. All right.
Again, can't trick me.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought it was a really nice scene when I don't quite know why that Miles has the cell phone. I guess because he's about to travel, and maybe our Miles was going to go get a new one the next day. It's not something that they talked about. It's not a huge problem, but I was just like, oh, he's still got the cell phone. So obviously, when Kate is their wife calls, which doesn't quite sound right, but he gets it, and then he's just really overcome by the fact that, like, wait, I'm like going away from this person who, by the way, I love, because I'm a clone of the guy who married her, and I have all those experiences and all those emotions. Amy, what did you think about that scene? It's really just Paul Rudd in the back of an Uber with a phone in his hand, you know, but I found it to be really well done.
Oh, no, same, 100%. I think in that moment is when I kind of like sat back and went like, oh my God, yeah, that's right. Like this guy, like he actually is in love with her. Yeah. He literally just met her, you know, 10 hours ago, but he actually has all these memories and actually like feels that love for her. So of course he's going to be conflicted and not be able to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it made complete sense. And it was definitely interesting. It was a good turn of events. I didn't think that the show was going to be, you know, the clone version traveling for, you know, 6 episodes and, you know, the other one trying to get by. But I didn't know that he was going to immediately turn around. You know?
Maybe he meets up with Tatiana Maslany from Orphan Black.
See, there you go.
He meets all the sisters.
Yeah. And I was just like, I went to a dark place. I'm like, what if the original Miles dies? And it's like, well, you still got this one.
Yeah,
you know?
we good. You got a backup.
You know, and he should have been dissolved in acid. So, I thought it was a nice touch. I thought it was a good scene that the clone Miles goes back to the house and he's just watching them. He's watching original Miles and Kate through the window, and of course he's going to have to go inside. And I thought that was a great ending. And boy, did it ask a lot of questions. I was watching it last night, I don't know, probably around midnight. And I needed to stop because I didn't want to get beyond episode 2 because we're doing this show. But I really wanted to know what happened next. And I as we're talking, I still don't know what happens next. So, just give me your thoughts on sort of what led up to it and that ending itself.
Yeah, I agree that by the time I got to the end, and especially because they are shorter episodes, you're just left wanting so much more at the end of them. But just seeing him, and of course, he knows where the key is. He knows how to get into the house. He knows everything about her schedule, about his schedule. So he's going to be able to figure out kind of the best time to make his move, or if he doesn't know what his move is yet. Like, I think that they set up a lot of nice things at the end there to make you just be like, okay, next. Yes, I'm still watching Netflix. Go to the next one.
Yeah, right, exactly. So we are left there, and we will have more coverage of this show tomorrow in the afternoon. Poke around over on AfterBuzz's YouTube page or the podcast feed, depending on how you're consuming this. And I believe, Amy, you will not be with us tomorrow.
I will not, unfortunately.
So we will have that clone version of myself that we didn't have for today, and hopefully both of me enjoy it. But before we go, we did want to share some news related to the show, which I think is a fun little story that you found.
AfterBuzz TV News.
So some really hard-hitting news today.
This is good stuff.
I might as well be a journalist on CNN. Paul Rudd split an apple in half with his bare hands, and people are freaking out about it.
I would like to see it, by the way.
Well, you can find this on delish.com. It was also like the top 5 news stories when I put in Paul Rudd's name right now. So,
which is great, by the way, because if you look through the news, like I do a lot for various shows that I do, to see something like this, to be at the top, you're like, oh, good. I'm glad that there's not 8 terrible things that would have pushed this out of the top 5.
We need this right now, guys. We need it.
Paul Rudd isn't the hero we deserve, but he's the hero that we need.
This is true. Yeah. And you know what? Actually, it's funny that you say that, because the first line of the article is, Paul Rudd may play a superhero on screen, but the man apparently also possesses superhuman strength in real life, because he recently proved he can split an apple in half with his bare hands.
See, now that's amazing. Now, one other thing we wanted to talk about was sort of his performance in this show, and if it evokes memories of other roles. Now, there's a film that I haven't seen that I know you have. What was the movie that you thought of?
The Fundamentals of Caring.
Right.
Came out a while ago. Selena Gomez was in it. And in the beginning, he's just kind of this broken man and has to learn how to caretake for someone else who is going through a lot of health difficulties, a younger kid. And so he has to kind of figure out how to just kind of deal with his shit and get past it and be able to help, someone else. And so I feel like in the beginning of this show, where he's just, so lost and just doesn't have any confidence in himself. And in Fundamentals of Caring, he went through a major trauma, so it's a little different. But some of the there's a little bit of character similarity in the beginning of this. And then he does kind of become a better version of himself, too, by the end of that movie, after learning how to be able to take care of someone else, too.
And then for me, I was sort of thinking about it. We were talking before the show, and what I think he does better than, he does perfectly, let's put it that way, is play the guy who finds himself in circumstances so far over his head, beyond his way of comprehending. And I think that's why he's perfect for Ant-Man, especially the Scott Lang Ant-Man, who is not the original Ant-Man, who just happens to end up being a guy in an Ant-Man suit. And I don't know. And as that character has gone along through Marvel movies, he continues we're doing time travel now? Okay, whatever, And I think that, he plays the regular guy in fantastic situations really well, which this show is exactly. And as we were talking about that, you were talking about his character from Parks and Rec, right?
Yeah, as Bobby Newport. Yeah. He had maybe a 5 or 6 episode arc where he was running against Leslie Knope in elections, and he was just this adorable, dum-dum, basically.
Yeah, definitely a dum-dum. Yeah.
Who was just, his dad was well-respected in the town, millionaire, who had the Sweetums candy factory.
Yes, I do remember Sweetums. Yeah.
And yeah, he was so in over his head, and he just had no idea what he was doing, but he was so likable. And I feel even Leslie, going against him, wanted to hate him because he's this spoiled guy who just is in this election because of his dad. And she's like, well, God, he's just so nice.
Yeah, he played it so well because he was just super, super nice. Yeah. So, I'm excited to have 6 more episodes of this show because, look, we could all use some more Paul Rudd in our life.
Yes, please.
So stay tuned. We'll talk more about it on Tuesday. But until then, Amy, where do people find you?
Yes, you guys can find me online, Twitter and Instagram at Amy Maestri. And then I also do the SNL shows on Tuesday, 5 Pacific. So we'll be doing the Chance the Rapper episode tomorrow.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And you can find me Thursdays over on the Popcorn Talk Network for Marvel movie news, where we talk about Ant-Man and many other things as well. That's all the time we have for now, but we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.